Today's sponsor of the SHI podcast is Carter Young. For those of you who may not know about Carter Young, which I can only assume you are brand new to student housing or you've been living under a dorm for the past 20 years, Carter Young is a debt recovery firm based in Georgia who has been specializing in debt recovery related to college students for over 2 decades. They even operate their call center out of Athens, Georgia, because they wanted to employ people who understand the student journey in order to give them a better chance of collecting from your student residents who end up owing you a balance after they move out. They also provide training programs to your on-site staff and review your operating methods to make sure everything is being done to prevent bad debt from happening. Now, how many debt recovery services do that? If you're not using Carter Young, I can guarantee you are leaving money on the table. Visit them at carter-young.com or follow the link in the show notes. Welcome to the Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees, and joining me today is special visitor co-host and new ambassador to SHI, Jessica Delis. Jessica,
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much.
So, Jessica, you are a regional manager for Campus Advantage. And something that I found very unique about you is that you're in Sacramento, California. And why that is so unique is because there are not a lot of, at least historically, it's becoming more of a thing, but there have not been a lot of California-based regional managers. Have you ever noticed that?
I have, yes.
So I'm super excited about the perspective that you're going to be able to give, and being a true California West Coast person and being in that position, because, man, I've been in this industry now for 24 years. And, you know, when I got started, like, purpose-built student housing wasn't even a thing in California.
Nope.
And it has certainly exploded. And but even through that explosion, it was really hard to get talent that was based in California. You know, you may be able to get somebody in Arizona or in the Pacific Northwest, but it was very hard to find anybody in California. So you're a unicorn, just so you know.
Well, thank you.
Well, hey, let's tell the audience a little bit about you. Obviously, you're a regional manager with Campus Advantage, and we want to thank Campus Advantage for all of their support with Student Housing Insight and the things that we're doing. But tell us, what was your first position in the industry?
So my first position was that leasing position, but because we don't have a ton of student in this area, it was actually in conventional. And it was a leasing agent position. And then I found a leasing manager position in student. And that's kind of how I entered. So I didn't have a ton of time in that conventional capacity, but I had a really great foundation.
What was your first market for student housing?
It was Sacramento, Sac State. It was the very, very first student housing purpose-built project.
Oh, that's so cool.
The Verge. Yes.
Cool.
And ironically enough, Campus Advantage managed it for a while. Not during my tenure, but in a previous time.
Cool. And so that's your first position. What's been your favorite position so far?
What's interesting is that was by far my most challenging position, but I think ultimately it's been my favorite. I learned
the leasing manager position.
Yes, yeah. It was just, it was an opportunity to really run the floor and be that leader to the front line. And it was such an amazing time. I will tell you that at that point in time, there wasn't a whole lot of knowledge to student housing. And so I really grew up with it, and it just became sort of part of, who I am today by living through that process.
Cool. So as I mentioned, you're one of our ambassadors for 2021. which, by the way, doesn't it feel great to say 2021 and not 2020 anymore?
It sure does.
I don't know what 2021 has in store, but I'm so glad it's not 2020 anymore.
Yes, we are all on that same page.
So yes, you applied to be one of our ambassadors, and for folks who want to find out who our ambassadors are for 2021 or want to find out more about that program, you can go to our website at studenthousinginsight.com. But we've got 12 ambassadors that we've got for this year. Actually, I take that back. We did expand. We've got 13. We did the ambassador program last year, and we had 6. And just between 2020 and all the things that were going on, we just really weren't able to utilize it very well. And as many folks will know, this is kind of our first podcast that I've done since November, or that I've posted since November. And that's because we took a little bit of a reset of our own and said, let's take some inventory of how we're doing things and come up with something for 2021 and how we want to, kind of come out of the gate with 2021. And so excited, super excited about telling everybody about that, but a little bit more on our ambassador program. We took applications in October, went through that, picked everybody going into December. And we've got a total of 13 individuals. I'm super excited about this cohort because we've got site level managers. We've got people on the West Coast, people on the East Coast, in the middle of the country. We've got VPs, we've got directors, we've got leasing managers, we've got property managers, regional managers, traveling positions. So a lot of really cool perspectives that I'm super excited about sharing with people. And you guys are going to get an opportunity to create some content and share with everybody this year. So thanks so much for volunteering for that. And, I think certainly from a standpoint of networking and being able to not just meet a lot of people, but, find out about how they operate in the student housing space and being able to share that with your group that you work closely with, I think is going to be a huge benefit. So thanks for doing that. I
agree. I'm so excited that you're doing this. I can't wait to watch the success.
Well, let's talk about, so the ambassador thing is new for 2021. We are also, how many webinars have you been on this past year? Have you been keeping count?
No.
I kept you off guard.
I could not count. I could not tell you, but several.
Yeah, and we did our own webinar, or webinar series. We actually did 2 of them last spring. One is what's happening in your region, where we were just catching up with folks on campus, as well as seeing what was going on within each region around the country, within the U.S., what was happening from a leasing perspective, because we were all really concerned when COVID hit. How is this going to play out? And I think for the most part, off campus, it did very, very well. And we could talk a little bit more about that. But the other second half of that series was preparing for fall 2020. There were so many things that we were asking ourselves of, how do we, how are we going to do turn, with PPE and folks in quarantine and, all of those things. How are, the properties that have to have shuttle services, like how do we manage our shuttle services during that time? And so I think there was a lot of benefit that those who registered for those 2 series got out of that, and a big thanks to everybody that pulled that together. And then there were some other webinars that I attended that were, here's what I like about Student Housing Insight. We are here for the operators. That's my background. That's my passion. And it's very important that we all understand the bigger market of student housing. But a lot of the webinars that were being put out, most of the focus was, what's happening, what's selling, who's getting financing. And all of those things are very important. We're going to talk a lot about that in 2021. But it really didn't help a lot of the operators. It is the sense that I got from everybody. And just the way it was structured caused a lot of issues for people. So we rethought about that. We knew in 2021 we were still going to be dealing with pandemic stuff and not a lot of in-person meeting. And what we really said is there needs to be like a weekly check-in. There needs to be a weekly come together, of our professionals to say, hey, let's take an hour and a half out and, be able to get some insight into what's happening to our industry and then also learn something, right? And that's what we are launching starting next week on February 3rd, and it's called the Memo Web Series. And it's going to be every Wednesday from February 3rd until the end of June. June 23rd, I think, is actually the last one that we're doing. And go ahead and warn everybody, the 5th Wednesday in March, we will not be having one. But otherwise, we will always have one 4 weeks out of each month. So super excited to be launching that. Like I said, we're going to do that through June. It's going to be Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern. I've got some great insights. I'll talk a little bit about the first one. That in that acronym MEMO, the first M stands for motivation and leadership. And we've got Kristen Hadid with Student Made and KristenHadid.com. If you know Kristen or have heard of her or think you may have heard of her, she wrote the book Permission to Screw Up, and it's got its genesis in student housing. It starts off with talking about her doing a student housing turn as a cleaning vendor, and she's got 60 employees and 45 of them walk out on day 2. And Kristen's just been incredible entrepreneur, millennial entrepreneur. And she's been on that book circuit and doing the TED Talks and doing all that kind of stuff. And I've just been really amazed at the insight that she has. I really felt like the student housing industry could get a lot out of it. So thanks to our friends at Cardinal and Alex O'Brien, who's good friends with Kristen, for setting that up and sponsoring that. But on February 3rd, we're going to be premiering that discussion that we had with Kristen. And then E out of MEMO, it stands for Educational Insights, specifically higher education industry insights. So we'll be talking to housing administrators and university administrators for those focuses. And then we're going to be, second M stands for Market Insights. And this is where we're going to get into what's happening region by region, velocity wise, from a standpoint of the leasing season. But we're also going to be talking to folks that are on the brokerage side and on the finance side, not from a standpoint of, hey, here's how many transactions closed last quarter. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that a little bit. But the main thing is, again, our audience is for operators. And so there's a lot of things when it comes to, selling and buying these assets that if operators and especially site level managers, there's some things that they're not paying attention to, they can really screw up a potential sell and certainly delay it. And we've got Jamie Swick with Colliers International, who actually used to be on the operations side. And so now that she's made that transition over to the brokerage side, she's got just an incredible amount of insight into, hey, this is what operators need to be focused on. So she'll be leading the first one for our market insights. Super excited about that. Also, College House, which has been a big sponsor of what we're doing and partner with us. They're going to also be a partner for the Memo series, and they'll be providing a lot of insight into what's happening leasing velocity wise as we go through this leasing season. And then, of course, the O stands for operations. We're going to be covering everything from, marketing and leasing to work orders and turn procedures, right? So super excited about that. Make sure that you're registered. It is $10. That's all it is $10. That gets you access for the entire year. And yes, we will be coming back in September through November. So it will include that as well. And I've got something, you like discounts, don't you, Jessica?
Of course.
So for everybody that's listening to this prior to February 3rd, if you go to our website and go to the registration page, you could put in promo code MEMO, that's MEMO 50, MEMO 50, and get 50% off. So it's only $5. We've got another great sponsor, the Pivotal Companies based out of Georgia, Monica Morgan. If you don't know her, look her up on LinkedIn. She's in the consulting space with student housing, but also her company offers a lot of other services to the student housing industry. And I know she's done a lot for Campus Advantage as well. So go check her out. But in large part, we're able to do this because of the sponsorship from Pivotal. So big thanks to them. Well, Jessica, I think that hopefully that catches everybody up. The only other thing I would mention is hopefully our folks that are listening to this, our audience members, are also plugging into the SHI community. And that is our kind of our own private Facebook on our website, our own forum where people can, share job posts. They can share thoughts and ideas of, what's happening in student housing and ask questions. I love Facebook. There's a lot of great, and I love LinkedIn. There's a lot of great groups out there for us to share. But as a lot of people have experienced, social media is getting really tired. So we wanted to create something. We created the SHI community over a year ago, but we really wanted to create something that allowed people, it's going to take a separate login, right? It's not like you're just flipping through Facebook and you happen to see something come up. This is the location that you go to specifically to talk all things student housing and what's impacting the professionals that are in it. So if you have not joined, make sure that you go to, again, studenthousinginsight.com, and you'll see up in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a login. You don't know your login yet, so just go ahead and click on it, and it'll give you the opportunity to create an ID. And once you do that, you can then go into the forum and see everything that we're talking about there. So I think that will probably catch everybody up on what's going on with SHI, which has absolutely nothing to do while you're here, Jessica.
Well, I love talking about it because it is such a valuable resource. And I'm so excited that you're doing it and that you've put it out there. And I think that as an industry, we need this. And the value is astronomical.
Well, we definitely got ambitious with our goals on what we wanted to do in 2021 for SHI. And I'm excited for everybody to see those as we reach them this year. And speaking of goals, that's what you're here to talk about today.
I am. I love goals. I really, personally, I really geek out on my goals each December for the following year, but it's been tough this year. And I think that, when you go and you're setting goals, you reflect on what was accomplished. And last year was tough, especially.
It was. I mean, and you and I shared this with you before. I've got a little bit of PTSD from goal setting in 2020, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And when we sat down to Carly Cockrum's our marketing associate, and back in October, we sat down to really kind of talk about this reset that we wanted to do from a content standpoint. And it was tough because all I kept thinking about is how the goalposts just kept moving in 2020. Mm-hmm. And we're just creating content, right? But it's you guys that, are trying to lease these apartments, trying to provide, leadership and guidance for your site staff and corporate staff throughout the entire company. I don't want to say I can only imagine because I've been very close to it this past year, and it's been tough.
It has, especially when you think about, as an industry, we're forecasting our goals 3 months before the year ends, and we're putting that in and we're preparing everything. So there's so much that goes into our industry goal setting. So it was very, very challenging, not just to look back on, where we fell short, but also to realistically try to look in that crystal ball and say, what's going to happen,
Yeah. So tell me about, as you've started setting things for 2021, tell me just about mindset and kind of what your process has been.
Yeah, so I mean, I think anytime you're setting goals, you always want to follow that golden SMART rule. They have to be realistic. You really have to dig deep in each market, each property, and understand what's happening with those markets specifically. Are the comps leasing? Are we leasing? Are we leading the market? Because ultimately, that's where we want to be. We want to stay within where the market is trending, but push, and really we're having to reforecast our weekly goals based on all these different metrics and what's happening.
So talk to me a little bit about, well, if there's anything else you want to expand on in regards to, kind of those not industry goals, but those more data driven technical goals. I'd love to hear anything else you want to talk about on that. But then I want to kind of get into, really just, I guess, kind of resetting your own brain and getting to, a right frame of mind, right? For doing it. Cause I know you've got some things you wanted to discuss, because a lot of that plays into mental health as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, the goals are the goals, and ultimately we have to hit those numbers in order to not fall short and, have a year where we're just drowning. So we're focused on that, but in that same vein, taking care of everyone and really realizing and being empathetic to the fact that we're all going through this still. I think we talked about, in March, we were like, this is hard. What's happening? And here we are 10, 11 months later in the same boat. I think that now we see a much brighter light at the end of the tunnel, but we still don't really know for sure what's coming. And, Dan Ulterstorff is a colleague of mine, and he had he did a recording back in March of last year when this initially hit. And it was a lot about mental health and kind of where we are. And he coincidentally just did a recap. And one of my takeaways, he was talking with Dr. Carrie Makenbird. And one of my big takeaways was, you have to be taking care of yourself as a leader. You can't lead the team and take care of the teams without taking care of yourself. And, how do you do that? What do you do? What is your ultimate plan to make sure that you're okay? And if you're not okay, because sometimes we're not okay, what's your plan and how do you handle that in the most constructive and productive way? I think that as a company as well, we've really tried to focus on that too, because, it's there, it's real. But in that same vein, we also have to be hitting these goals. So it's a fine line, right? Because everybody's going through this challenging time, and, work is only one piece of the puzzle, of one piece of everyone's life. And so while on one hand, we're leading these teams to hit these goals, and we're, stressed about making sure that the properties fill up, because we have an obligation to the investors and to the clients. And that's if we don't have that, we don't have an industry. So that's important, but also making sure that we're taking care of everybody and that we're not so hyper focused on that. While that's so important, so are the people. The people are so important, every single one. And something that Carrie had mentioned on the call was, we kind of got used to this. Okay, we log on, we turn the cameras on, and we just jump in. And we don't have that time to sort of walk around the conference room and say hello and grab your coffee and build that rapport. We're just jumping on in.
Talk about the dog. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was really an eye opener for me to just make a solid effort to be better at that and make sure that, for me personally, my teams know that they are, as humans, a priority to me, because while the business is, so are the people.
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because we're recording this on Friday the 22nd. And so just a couple of days after the inauguration, and it was Wednesday, I was on a phone call with a university housing staff, and it's been a weekly call. It's related to a property that I oversee from a consulting standpoint that has delivered late, and so it's been very, very stressful with these communications that we've had because the students are coming back. They spent the entire semester in a hotel. And although it was a very short semester because they left right before Thanksgiving, they're coming back and things are 99.5% done, but it's that 0.5% that's just stressing everybody out, here before the students move in this weekend. And so it was a late phone call for me because this is a West Coast property. And it was, while I was waiting, I happened to pick up my phone. I'd really not watched anything since the inauguration earlier that day. And the memes started coming out with Bernie Sanders. And I got on the phone just cracking up, and I was like, guys, have you seen this? And, held my phone up to the webcam so everybody could see it. And there, everybody kind of seen something, one of the memes, right, with him and his knit gloves. And
he is everywhere.
everywhere. And so, it just having that, having that moment of 2 or 3 minutes where you're just laughing about, how funny it was. And, they started showing ones that they had seen that I hadn't seen yet. And we missed that in the Zoom calls because so many times we jump into it and it's like, bam, 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 let's get through this. So that really just kind of lightened the mood. And, I think all of us felt like, this is going to be okay. We're all human beings here, and we've got things going on, but we're also focused on the task at hand. So that's a great point that you bring up about just scheduling that extra time, even if it's in a Zoom call.
Right. Just a couple minutes, just taking that 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes just to appreciate that everyone is human and we're all in this together. And, how's everyone doing? What are you doing this weekend? What's going on in your life, and just keeping that at the forefront.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic that Dan is taking that time to bring a professional like that in to speak with you guys. And I hope other companies are doing that as well. We've all been dealing with mental health issues, not only with ourselves, but with our kids as well. I've had that, within my family, and just, getting my child to see, a therapist, has, there's year-long waiting lists. I mean, literally. And so that's fantastic. One resource I wanted to mention to everybody as it relates to mental health, especially with students, and we've got so many, student staff members, is JED, JED. And I'll put some links in the show notes so that people can go to their website and get that resource. And it's been very helpful to a lot of the folks that I work with on the consulting side. So yeah, any other wise words that Dan had for approaching mental health?
I think that, the big ones that stood out to me was the human, making sure you're keeping that human element in everything that you do, and just being the best version of you. Dan's a senior VP, and there's so many of us out there that are leaders, whether you're a leasing manager or a general manager or a regional manager or a VP, you're a leader. And so you have to make sure that you are being the best version of yourself, because if you're not pulling through what you need to do for your teams.
Yeah. So I want to go back to this whole thing that we talked about with the moving goalpost and how that's created a lot of PTSD among not just off campus, but on campus professionals as well. You mentioned in our prep that for this, that those goals should still be SMART as always, and you capitalize SMART. So tell us a little bit about what that means.
Well, I mean, ultimately, you want to have your goals be that good old fashioned SMART acronym. And what that acronym stands for is specific, measurable, assignable, realistic, and time related. So you want to, if you're setting a goal, you want all of the pieces that make the goal realistic. How are you going to get there? So your goal should be specific. You should be able to measure it by, the quantity of progress. How are you going to measure that? You want to be assignable to, specify who's going to do it, who's responsible for this goal. We want 10 leases on the board. Who is responsible for each one of those leases? Realistic. Are you realistically going to get 10 leases if you've had 2 pieces of traffic coming through the door? Probably not. So how are we going to get more traffic to make sure that you're hitting that goal? And then time related is obviously we need to get to this goal by this time. So I use leasing as an example, but obviously it really relates to any type of goal that you're going to be setting.
It does. It does. So let's talk a little bit about leasing velocity. I mean, how are you applying that SMART method to setting out goals for leasing velocity for your sites?
Great question. We're keeping a very, very, very tight pulse on the market, each individual market. So, if we have a competitor in our market where we're usually ahead of, but for some reason this past week, they had, 15 new leases or they jumped up 10%, we're diving real deep. Chances are they're giving away some sort of incentive, but the expectation for the teams is to know why. Why are they doing better than us? And so it's taken a lot of commitment from our teams to be engaging on a whole new level on those market surveys. It's building reports, making sure you're getting good data, because without that, we just don't know where we stand as well. We know that everything is later. We know that everything is slow right now, but
go ahead.
If we're looking at the market as a whole and everyone is 30% behind last year, that gives us a good indicator that we're doing everything that the rest of the market is. And that's where we are right now as a whole.
Yeah, that is so important. And of course, I know most of the operators that are listening to this podcast, they've got things in place to measure their competitive set in their market, the other properties and how they're doing. And one thing that, to tie this back into what we mentioned earlier with College House, and if you want more information on them, go to collegehouse.com. You'll have a little pop-up that says research tool, and you'll just hit learn more, and you'll go to their data product. But that's one thing I'm really excited about, while we wanted to have this market insight session each month with College House, because we know that we're going to see, what happened last year is going to be different than what's happening this year. And it's not going to be like it was 2 years ago. And so I think it's so important that you're seeing that not just within your own market, but within regions as well. And one of the things that we're doing, I'm super excited about, is taking a measurement of what's happening in each region. We've got 7 different regions, and really seeing who in those regions are doing better than what they did last year, year over year. And we'll be giving away, an award for that in each region. So excited about that, but can't express enough how using a tool like College House data is going to be key in really understanding how we're all doing. So put in a quick plug for Charlie and the guys over at College House. Another thing that I've got to imagine from a goal setting standpoint that's been really tough, and it's even tough thinking about it into 2021, is resident engagement. I mean, that has completely changed. It has.
But you know what? We found good ways. We are still keeping engagement with our residents. And it's so nice to see. We have several different platforms that we use to make this successful. But we've done it. We have. I can say that, a couple of things that we've been very, very successful with are things like virtual game nights or social media quizzes. What's interesting is you and I were kind of talking about these items, and something that's so interesting because, I wanted to really get feedback from the teams on what they felt was the most successful of all of the events that they've done since March of 2020. And what's so interesting to me is that one of the all-time classic student housing events is Breakfast on the Go, right? During finals week. And we still did it. We just did it. We put it out. We had tables set up. It was done safely. And that was still one of the biggest hits. Just very interesting to me.
Yeah. Any specific tools or anything that you've used to help with those, virtual games and meeting up with people remotely?
One of the easiest ones that we've used is Instagram Live. We've done different things, obviously, like, Kahoot, which is great for quizzes and games where people are engaging and selecting the answers. But even just the, virtual grocery bingo we did on Instagram Live. And it's having people come on there and getting them to engage. So on the Kahoots and things like that, they're not really engaging as a group, but having them come on and, put messages in the chat and just be really involved has been great to see.
Well, fantastic. Any other suggestions on, how we kind of move forward from 2020 and into 2021?
I think what we have going for us is that there is ultimately a light at the end of the tunnel. I've seen things really looking up. I'm excited to hear each time I hear about a new embassy opening or, having restrictions on travel lifted. It's hope because so much of where we hurt this year was on international. It was huge. And especially for my entire portfolio, we had a lot of master leases with China specifically. And so I'm so excited to move forward from that and get to, it's going to be a new normal, but it's going to be great. And we have to be optimistic. We have to lead our teams in the right direction. And what's remarkable to me is, yes, 2020 was a tough year, but what we saw was an industry that was so impacted continue to pivot in such a positive direction to get in front of all of these hurdles. How many hurdles did we experience? Just things that we never even expected to have to push through, and we did it. And it's so remarkable. And I think it's just very, very important to celebrate those victories and celebrate every victory every single day to keep that motivation alive.
No, I think that's. I think you're exactly right. You gotta look at those little things and take joy in that, right? We didn't get. It felt like we got here overnight, and things did happen very, very fast. And typically, when things freeze up very fast, they also thaw out very fast. This is. In a lot of ways, we did freeze up really quick when things happen, especially in our industry, because colleges were so impacted right away, right? A lot of other businesses, it was over several weeks, even a couple of months before lockdowns really started impacting them. With us, it was almost immediate, and I would say in a lot of ways, we've weathered that well because the universities had to de-densify, had to send everybody home. And, we were there to be able to help those students out that didn't have a home to go back to or didn't want to go back home. So it's been great from that standpoint. And 46,000, I read this week, 46,000 less students, international students, first year international students, year over year between fall 2019 to fall 2020. And that's a big, big, big number.
Sure is.
And hopefully that will start to rebound. We've got some great information that's actually going to be in our second episode of Memo, where we're talking to administrators about some of the things that are happening, both from a policy standpoint with the new administration, and also just kind of where things are how things are rebounding from COVID and how it's not going to impact us certainly the spring or summer. It's going to start getting better in the fall, and we expect it to slowly start to rebound. So we got to take joy in those little things. Those are going to be key. Well, Jessica, we're at the end of our time, and I appreciate it so much for you taking some time out and talking to our group and just giving perspective to our audience of how you're approaching this year. I think it's so key that we're talking about that, and I think there's a lot of other great things that folks can get out of the upcoming episode that we've got with Kristen Hadid, again premiering February 3rd on our Memo webinar series. So make sure you go and check that out. Any other parting thoughts?
It's going to be a good year. And I'm so excited. And I will say Kristen Hadid is incredible, and so excited to have her be part of this Memo series.
Yeah. It was definitely, we had a live audience of our ambassadors, and Mitch and Cardinal sponsored that as well. And so they had a lot of their employees on there. So it was a good Q&A as well, and excited for everybody to hear that. Well, Jessica, I appreciate it. Have a great weekend and enjoy. Is it sunny in Sacramento this weekend?
It's not. It was so beautiful yesterday, and then it started raining. And I do see some sunshine now, but it's supposed to be a little rainy.
Well, I'm sure the sun will come out soon. So take joy in that.
Yes.
And we will chat soon. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Wes.